Hi everyone. So it's just one day left for your prelims examination. All of you must be in your last minute revision and many of you must be very nervous and anxious about the exam. So our entire year of hard work is going to be tested in those 2 hours on the Sunday morning. It is because of this fact that we end up taking unnecessary pressure on that Sunday morning and we end up committing a lot of mistakes which we would have otherwise not committed if we were to give that question paper in a relaxed environment. So I'm here to give you some practical tips which you can apply in those 2 hours in the examination hall and can help you reduce those unwanted mistakes that you would have otherwise committed. So when I was writing my first prelims, I ended up attempting more than 90 questions, out of which I got more than 30 in the negative marking. So 30 questions I made mistakes and I got a lot of negative marking. So because of which I couldn't clear my first prelims. But later on, I realigned my strategy and I worked in such a way that in all the successive prelims, I ended up clearing the forest cutoff as well. And in the year I got rank, I ended up getting more than 140 marks in the prelims exam. So for those of you who do not know about me, my name is Kruthika and I have secured rank 194 in the 2017 CSE exam and rank 100 in 2018 CSE exam. So I have jotted down some important and practical tips that you should remember on your exam day that can help you reduce your mistakes and also see you through the cutoff and clear the prelims exam. So let's start with those tips. So I would like to begin by sharing my experience and the strategy that I adopted in the 17 exam where I ended up scoring more than 145 marks. So I basically decided that I'm going to attempt the entire paper in about 1.5 hours. So in 1.5 hours, I'm going to go through all the 100 questions and give my first iteration throughout the paper. And in this, I'm going to mark only those questions on which I'm 100% sure that this is the correct answer. In the remaining half an hour, I'm going to go through my paper 2 more times. So overall, there will be 3 iterations of your question paper. In the next 2 iterations, I'm going to decide and shortlist all those questions which I'm going to take a little bit of risk and mark them, because in civil services prelims exam, you cannot be 100% sure about your answer in say 80 or 90 questions. You can be 100% sure maybe in 40 or 50 questions, but after that you have to take some amount of risk. But we have to minimize the risk that we take and we have to take a calculated risk, for which it's important for us to go through multiple iterations of the paper so that we can decide for ourselves which of these questions are the best for us to answer and take the risk. So therefore, in the last half an hour that is left in the exam, I would go through the entire paper again and then mark only those questions which I feel I can take the risk. So from this, I'm going to give you 3 important tips. The first important tip is, I have seen some of my friends who have found it very difficult to complete even 100 questions in a matter of 2 hours. So the question of time management occurs even in the prelims, and it's important for us to manage time. So I used to attempt nearly 30 to 33 or 35 questions in every half an hour, so that I end up attempting all the 100 questions, at least going through all the 100 questions by the end of 1.5 hours. So while I'm doing this first iteration, I would use 2 types of pointers. So the first pointer was I would draw a circle around those questions on which I am almost 75% sure. That is, out of the 4 given options, I am sure about 3 options, but just 1 option is confusing me. So there is a good probability of me getting that answer correct. So I would mark that using a circle. And then in the remaining questions where I'm 50-50 sure about it, that is, I'm sure about 2 options, but I'm confused in 2 more options, where there is a 50-50% possibility of me getting the answer right or wrong. So these kinds of questions I would mark with an asterisk. So now when I go through the question paper again in the last half an hour, I would first attempt those questions which I have marked as circles, because I'm 75% sure in those questions, and then I would mark those asterisk questions on which I'm 50% sure. So this way, first of all, it helps me in time management. So I'm not running short of time. I have already gone through all the 100 questions in a matter of 1.5 hours, and I still have half an hour left with me to decide which of the remaining questions I should be attempting. Now, let us suppose that out of the 100 questions, in the first iteration, where I would be marking all those questions on which I'm 100% sure. So there were 40 such questions that I have attempted in the first iteration about which I am 100% sure. So in the next iteration, that is where I will be attempting those questions on which I am 75% sure. So in that iteration, let's say I have attempted 20 questions. So it comes to a total of 60 questions. So in the last iteration, I would be attempting questions on which I am 50% sure. So I would be attempting at max only 15 questions where I have 50% chances. So it comes down to 75 questions. So this trick behind this is, out of the 15 questions that I attempt in the end, in which I am just 50% sure of the answer, and if out of my hard luck all these 15 questions go wrong, so maximum I will be losing just 10 marks as my negative. So in fact, in the prelims examination, many of us are tempted to answer multiple questions and take wild guesses, due to which we end up getting a lot of negative marking. So it is this negative marking which decides whether we are into the list or out of the list. So it's very important for us to improve the accuracy in answering the questions and to reduce the negative marking. So therefore, in the last iteration, I would attempt maximum 15 questions in which I am just 50% sure of the answer, so that even if all the 15 questions go wrong, I will at maximum be losing just 10 marks in the negative. So here is a second tip that I want to give, is that you have to reduce the negative marking. Don't end up making wild guesses just by looking at the question without even you cannot try to eliminate anything. If you are not able to come at a calculated risk, good guess, so something that's extremely factual, don't try to take a wild guess, and by hazarding such a guess, don't end up attracting negative marking in those questions. For example, there was one question saying Bunny Thani belongs to which school of painting. So here there is no use of common sense. There is nothing that you can use to eliminate the answers and arrive at the right answer. So this is purely factual knowledge. If you know, you attempt. If you don't know, don't attempt. Don't hazard guesses in such kind of factual questions and end up getting a negative marking on that. So this is a second tip that I am giving you, is to reduce the negative marking and don't yield to unnecessary temptations to attempt those questions which are completely factual and on which you cannot make any analysis and use common sense and rule out the incorrect answers. So now let's begin with the third tip. Many of you have one very common question, which is how many questions to attempt in the prelims exam. So well, this is a very subjective question and it depends on person to person. I have known people who have attempted 95, 99, 100 questions and even they have cleared the prelims exam. But for me, accuracy was my strength. Every time I attempted anywhere between just 72 to 76, 77 questions, and I always used to get maybe 3 to 6 questions wrong. So therefore, accuracy was my strength. So this, whether you are a person who is strong with accuracy or you are a person who is going to give more number of attempts of questions, this fact you would have figured out when you are giving multiple mocks in the test series that you would have joined and you would have given. So by now you already know what is your strength. So by now you already know how many number of questions you have to attempt, whether you have to improve, whether you have to attempt more number of questions, or whether you have to restrict your attempts because accuracy is your strength. Because for me, if I take any wild guesses, then more often than not that would go wrong. So I would restrict myself from taking such guesses and attempting more number of questions, but rather I would look for reducing my negatives and improving my accuracy. So therefore it depends upon your individual strength, whether you are a person who is good with accuracy or you are a person who wants to attempt more number of questions. But at the same time, the tip that I am giving here to you is that don't go with a very rigid mindset. Now supposing you are a person who is attempting more number of questions, you are usually a person who attempts more than 90 questions in the paper. So you are good with that. But you go to the exam hall and you discover that the prelims paper is on a tougher side. But then you feel that just after 70 questions you feel that you're not able to answer more. But then just because you have been used to answering more than 90 questions, don't end up marking more than 70 questions and make it reach till 90. Because whatever strategy you adopt about the number of questions that you want to answer depends upon the toughness of the paper. So if you, after a rigorous preparation of 1 year, if you are feeling the paper is tough, then the paper is also tough for the others. So don't be under the impression that you are finding the paper tough and you are attempting only 70 questions. Rather, you should have attempted more number of questions. So don't carry such impression with you. So depending upon the toughness of the paper, you would decide for yourself on the day how many questions you have to attempt. But however, remember the tip 2, that your aim should be to reduce the negatives. So if you're feeling the paper is tougher, then accordingly reduce the number of questions that you have to attempt so that you don't end up getting a lot of negative marking. So this is the third tip. So now let's come to the fourth tip. The fourth tip is avoid overthinking in the exam hall. So don't be under the impression that UPSC purposefully will give you very confusing questions and you will have to overthink a lot. So don't be under that impression. UPSC is not there to fool you there with some confusing questions. I'll give a small example. If you have a question like which of the following countries are touching seas or oceans, and one of the option is Kazakhstan, you will feel that okay, Kazakhstan is bordering Caspian Sea, and Caspian Sea technically is not a sea but it is rather a lake. So this is a classic example of overthinking and you will not mark Kazakhstan. So Caspian Sea means it is a sea or ocean, so that is what UPSC is simply asking. It is a water body. So Kazakhstan should be a part of your answer, and don't overthink that Caspian Sea is technically not a sea, it is a lake. So avoid all these overthinking on the examination day. So this is your fourth tip. Let's now talk about the fifth tip. The fifth tip is read the questions very, very carefully. So this sounds very cliched, but however it's a very important tip, because I have personally experienced this myself. For example, in one of the prelims exam, there was a question that the very good fishing grounds are found in the areas of, and then there were 4 options. So those of you who have read and revised your geography well, you know that the very good fishing grounds are found in regions where the warm and the cold ocean currents mix. But however, just by looking at the question that very good fishing grounds are found in, I was so excited that I already know the answer to this question and I did not read the options properly. And I ended up marking a wrong option because there was 2 confusing options. One said the mixing of warm and cold ocean currents, and the other said it's a mixing of warm and cold air currents. So I did not see the air currents and just saw the warm and cold, and then I ended up marking that answer, so which obviously was a wrong answer, because fishing grounds are obviously found in areas where the warm and the cold ocean currents mix and not air currents. So these are very simple examples that I'm telling you, which I have myself committed. It's only because by looking at a question we feel okay, this I know very well, so I'm going to answer this. So because of this we don't read the question properly. So always read the questions twice, thrice, in a very relaxed manner. Read the questions. At the same time, don't overthink on any question, but do understand what the question is asking. And many times you also face a question in the UPSC prelims exam saying which of the following is not correct. But we usually, what we do is we don't see the not, but we just see the correct, and then we end up marking a different answer, which will obviously become wrong. So you have to keep yourself very attentive, be very alert in the examination hall, and then read the question properly. If the question is asking not, then and there put a circle around it so that you know that you have to answer which of the following are not correct. So these kind of mistakes you please avoid, because 2 marks could have been in your pockets, but then just because you didn't read the question properly, you have not just lost those 2 marks but also 0.66 marks because of the negative. So this tip is to read the questions extremely thoroughly 2 to 3 times before you attempt the answer. So now let's come to the 6th tip. The 6th tip is about when do we fill the OMR sheet. So there are 2 kinds of people. One who, as soon as they read the question and they decide the answer for that question, they then and there attempt on the OMR sheet. Then and there they share the OMR sheet. But there are another kind of people who, what they do is they end up attempting the entire paper on the question paper itself, and when it is just 5 to 10 minutes to bell, they start rounding the OMR sheet. So this will lead to a lot of trouble in the end, because if you are finding shortage of time in the end, definitely you will feel a lot of hurry when you are shading your OMR sheet. In that hurry, you may end up doing a lot of mistakes, and that can cost you really huge. So I have my own friend who has experienced this once. So what he did was he marked the OMR sheet towards the end. So in a hurry, he must have marked some answer above and below. So because of which he ended up getting just 18 marks out of 200 marks in the prelims. So he even applied for RTI, but nothing really happened. So this is because when we try to fill the OMR towards the end, we are in a hurry, and then with just those roll numbers, the question numbers can just get mixed up, and then you might just end up shading it in a wrong order. So because of which every question below that particular question will go wrong in the entire OMR sheet. So that person, my friend, was getting in 130s when we matched the keys with the answer keys that are available, but then he ended up getting 18 marks in prelims. So to avoid such mistakes, as soon as you decide the answer for the particular question, shade in the OMR sheet then and there itself. So this is the tip about the OMR shading. So now let's quickly summarize the tips that we have discussed. First is time management. Try to wind up the paper in the first 1.5 hours. Keep the next half an hour for 2 more iterations of your paper, so that you end up marking only those questions of which you are sure about and don't end up losing much in negative marking. The second tip we discussed was reducing the negatives. So for which, as I again said, that you have to attempt at max 15 questions in which you are just 50% sure, so that even if all the 15 go wrong, you end up getting only 10 marks as your negative. The third tip we discussed was about how many questions to attempt. So it depends on whether your strength is accuracy or you're a person who attempts more number of questions. At the same time, keep the flexibility so that you decide it on the day of the exam depending upon the difficulty level of the paper. The fourth tip we discussed was stop overthinking in the exam. Take the sentences, the words written by UPSC as it is. Don't use your brain too much there, and don't overthink. The fifth tip that we discussed was to read the questions properly. So whenever it is written not correct, underline and circle it so that you know what it is asking. Go through all the options thoroughly, read the question 2 to 3 times before marking it on the OMR sheet. The sixth tip that we discussed was about filling the OMR sheet. Better to do it simultaneously than at the end, because you are in a hurry and you tend to make mistakes. So we have discussed 6 important tips which can help you in practical tips which can help you on the day of your exam in the examination hall. But let me tell you, most important even of all these tips is the fact that you have to go to the examination hall completely relaxed and calm. So just feel that this 2 hours is just another mock that you are giving, which you have been giving. So many of you must have given 30, 40, 50 mocks before attending the actual exam. So just consider that this is just your 31st mock test that you are giving, and it is just another Sunday. It is going to go away just like that, and you are going to give your best. So stay calm, stay relaxed, stay composed, because it's only when we are calm and peaceful from inside that our memory can retrieve all the information that we would have studied. Otherwise, even seemingly simple things, we find it very hard and we strain our memory to retrieve the information, which doesn't happen. So just stay peaceful, stay calm, stay composed, and definitely you will do really very well. And from my side, I'm wishing you all the very best for your prelims examination. All the best. Thank you.